I'm Oska and I'm an ACP.
I'm Reg and I'm also an ACP.
Welcome to our digital queer tour of Sain Ffagan. Traditional crafts have their place in all communities in Wales. At the Gwaith, we can find various examples that connect to our LGBT heritage. The skills used in handmade textiles play a role in many facets of queer history. From embroidered jackets and queer clothing, to banner making.
Effigies like the Ganesha statue and the at his head connect us to the many beliefs and religions in Wales. Some deities we are able to interpret through a queer lens, be it their relationships to others or their gender expression. Love spoons are traditionally seen as gifts given as tokens of affection, thought to originally be made by men for women. By having one carved with the name John, we must question if this is the name of the artist who crafted it or the name of the person who received it. If we believe that men were the ones who carved these gifts, then could this be an example of a spoon given to a male lover?
Churches and other places of worship often serves as a centre point for many Welsh communities. Within the Amgueddfa Cymru's LGBTQ+ collection, we have queer choir posters showing that for some LGBT people in Wales, the church was not a hostile place and still functioned as an important place to connect with others and their faith.
Wales is home to many rural communities, and although they may not be extensively documented, LGBTQ+ people have inhabited these villages for centuries.
Here we are at the Oakdale Workmen's Institute. There is a rich history of solidarity between mining communities in Wales and the LGBTQ community. Alliances between the LGBTQ groups and labour unions, such as National Union of Miners, began during the 1980s, when groups like Lesbians and Gays Support the Miners and Lesbians Against Pit Closures were formed to provide aid to striking miners.
Heightened homophobic pressure from the Conservative Party, alongside these newly formed partnerships, led to a proposed resolution at the 1985 Labour Party Annual Conference to criminalise discrimination against lesbian, gay and bisexual people. A motion that was supported by a block vote from the National Union of Miners. That same year, South Wales coal miners and their families marched in London's Pride Parade alongside members of LGSM.
It is very plausible that miners who had previously felt the need to stay closeted were able to finally come out after seeing such an outpour of support for the LGBTQ community.
Shops exist to serve the needs of the community and become more specialised the more they cater to minority groups. Shops give us a good understanding of what is important to the patrons, which is how shops like the Queer Emporium in Cardiff exist, as a point to serve and support the queer community in Wales. Within the collection, we have several items that are sold there, such as accessories and clothing.
Through much of history, the criminalisation of homosexuality meant that queer people often had to meet in secret. Public toilets were a common meeting spot, as they were private enough without attracting too much attention. The activity as we know it is called cottaging. The Sexual Offences Act 1967 permitted sex between consenting men over 21 years of age when conducted in private, but the Act specifically excluded public lavatories from being private.
The domestic, everyday life of queer people is often lost to history. Many people would have been living in homes just like this one, usually keeping their identities a secret and possibly feeling isolated in their communities.
This house is dated to the 1980s. which was a particularly tense time for the LGBTQ community. Following the start of the AIDS epidemic in the early 80s, gay men found themselves the victims of stigmatisation due to the media wrongly reporting that AIDS was an explicitly homosexual problem. This led to a queerphobic spotlight on LGBTQ communities that would carry on throughout the decade.
Hello. Hi.
We can imagine a queer person living in a house just like this one during the mid-80s when the miners' strike of 1984 to 1985 was happening. During this time, they may have learned about LGSM and even potentially taken part in solidarity campaigns happening between Dwylo miners and London LGBTQ activists at the time.
Or perhaps a queer person may have lived here during the late 1980s, when Section 28 was introduced by the Conservative government and the promotion of homosexuality was criminalised.
Here at the toll booth, we can see posters from the Rebecca riots, which took place between 1839 and 1843. These protests against high taxation were carried out by men dressed in women's clothing to obscure their identities.
Although not an explicitly queer event, we can view the act of cross-dressing at the Rebecca riots through a queer lens due to the role of protests in both Welsh and LGBTQ+ history.
Protest plays a large role in social history. These Black Lives Matter placards are significant because solidarity plays a quintessential role in connecting those with intersectional marginalised identities. For example, the Gay Black Group was a group for LGBTQ people of colour that historically met at Gays the Word bookshop. Contemporarily in Wales, Glitter Cymru is a group for LGBTQ+ people of colour.
The LGSM formed as a way of supporting the mining communities in Wales during the miners' strikes in the mid-80s. Here we have the initial design idea that eventually developed into the pin used to express queer solidarity with the miners. Next to the pin, we can see that the design has changed, but the overall concept has remained much the same.
The women portrayed on this teapot are Lady Eleanor Butler and Sarah Ponsonby, who are considered to be the most famous lesbian couple in history. Originally from Ireland, the pair overcame family opposition and scandalised contemporary society to elope together. They moved to Plasnewydd in 1779 and lived there for over 50 years. They were known to have worn men's clothing, signed their correspondence jointly, and refused to spend a single night away from home. They were celebrities of their time and received visits from numerous people, including the Duke of Wellington, William Wordsworth, Walter Scott, and Anne Lister.
This object is either a fire screen or storytelling paddle. Like the teapot, it depicts the ladies of Llangollen and was made by Vale of Clwyd Toys in 1915. The Vale of Clwyd Toys was established to provide employment for local farmers and later employed wounded soldiers during and after the First World War.
Ivan Novello was an actor, dramatist and composer from Cardiff who produced many popular musicals throughout the early 20th century. It was an open secret in theatrical circles that Novello was gay and was in a long-term relationship with actor Bobby Andrews for 35 years. This is a songbook for Perchance to Dream, which was a romance musical first performed in 1945 to immense success that had over 1,022 performances. Thank you for watching our digital queer tour of Sain Ffagan's.
You can find more of our LGBTQ+ collection online on the collections page on the Amgueddfa Cymru website. Diolch.
Diolch.